housing and all the rest of it. And so there's a lot to get to. So let's get to it. First, we're going to start at housing. And it is not legal. It is not it's probably legal, but it's not within Kijiji's terms of service to post shared rooms. However, a lot of people do it, so much that Justice Queen has made videos of all of these rooms that are available, and the music's terrible. So this is a 1-bath, 1-bed house shared room. So you get $820 for the bedroom, or excuse me, $820 for the bed, $1,640 for the bedroom. Okay, so if you want both beds in the room, or you could take a bed out, I guess, and have the whole room to yourself, but that would be $1,640 for the room and access to a bathroom. Maybe there's an ensuite, I don't know. And Dave says, it's insane how many of these you've posted. I cannot believe that we allow such squalor conditions in Canada. There are hopefully laws to deal with this. And if you click in here, Kijiji responds, and they say, thanks for your pointing this out or bringing this to our attention. We don't permit these ads on our platform. The ad has now been removed. Thanks again for your concern and have a lovely night. And then the person shares another one for the same kind of thing, $700 for room for rent. DESI students attention available March 1st. So this is available to specific group of people. It's not to anybody, right? Like if I wanted to rent the room, it's not happening, right? It's probably not going to fly, right? So I think that it's very, very interesting what's going on with regards to housing just in the rental market. Here's CTV News reporting Canada's housing crisis will take years to solve, this says the finance minister. The finance minister isn't interviewed here. This guy is. He's an economist, and I can't remember who he is exactly. It was at the beginning of the clip, but what he's saying is impactful, and I watched like 3 minutes of this. It's another quick clip that it's a medium long clip that doesn't feel like a long clip. We'll listen. Here we go.
You look at something called the supply gap. What is that in layman's terms?
Well, in layman's terms, that's going to be a challenge. Basically, we're trying to look at what demand will be at an affordable price in 2030. And then we're comparing that demand to what supply we think will be in 2030. And the gap is the difference between those numbers. So between what demand will be and what supply will be.
And it's a huge gap that you've identified.
It's huge.
You did this report in June of last year, and it's only just a tiny bit has been shaved off. Essentially, 3.5 million homes are still needed above and beyond what's already planned. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's accurate, yes.
And can you characterize for us how the scale of that? How big is that?
Well, maybe another way of putting it is that if we look at current housing starts, which is around 250,000 a year, we need to at least double it. So it's an enormous challenge. It's taking housing construction growth back to levels we haven't seen since the 1970s. It's a huge challenge.
When is the last time you saw, or this country saw, a housing crisis of this scale? Has it ever?
Maybe the late 1980s. Maybe, but I think we're getting into serious territory, or particularly because of the level of household debt that we're now incurring. I don't think in the late 1980s the level of debt was this bad. Now household debt is more than the size of our economy, so this is just a huge vulnerability that we have here, and I think it's quite unprecedented.
And how long would you say you could have seen it coming? And by that I mean, has this kind of been a crisis brewing for a while, or is it just interest rates that all of a sudden made it this bad?
Oh no, it's been, I would say, at least a decade. Now, we hadn't done all the analysis a decade ago, but we certainly produced a report in 2018 that outlined all of the problems that we're currently facing. So it's been a long time in the making, unfortunately, a long time to solve it as well.
Well, that's kind of my follow-up question.
A long time to solve it as well. Okay, so there's a couple of things that he's talking about here, but he says a report was produced in 2018. That's not a decade ago, that's 5 years ago. There's a big difference. A decade ago, Stephen Harper was in charge, and a housing crisis or a housing shortage did not look like something that was likely to happen. It just looked like regular, everyday, run-of-the-mill inflation. Although, I guess if you look at housing, it was going up by, 30%, 20%, whereas the rest of inflation at that time was not so quick to rise, perhaps. But I wasn't paying too close attention to real estate back then. I probably should have been. But fundamentally, he's saying that this has been a long time coming. we've had a report in 2018 that talked about the impact of this and the high household debt and so on and so forth. And we need to double it. The other thing that I've been saying for a long time is it is not easy to double the output of housing because you need the skills to be able to output that product. You can't just like wave a magic wand and say, that house you just built, you should have built 2 in the same time, same quality, the whole deal, 2 instead of 1. You can't do that. It doesn't work. And never mind 3, right? Or more. So why are we housing people? Why are we spending money to bring people here who we can't house? Period. Right? Why are we allowing our money to be devalued to this degree? This person is comparing 2023 to 1970. There is something happening when your money is losing its buying power at this rate. Watch, here we go.
1970, the average home was $15,000. It is now $436,000. It has gone up.
Not in Canada. Not in Canada. The average home in Canada is double that now, like 790 or over 800,000. So just keep that in mind as well. It looks like these are U.S. numbers. So take it with a grain of salt, as we take everything with a grain of salt, right? Sorry, I'm having problems with my camera today, I guess. Anyway, carry on.
29 times. Rent was 108, is now 2,000. That's gone up 20 times. College was 500, it's now $11,000. That's gone up 20 times. Gas was 36 cents, it's now 380. That has gone up 10 to 12 times. But what about the income? In 1970, the average person was making $9,000. Today, they're making $56,000. That has only gone up 6 times compared to everything else. But this is where it gets sad. In 1970, the average household had 3.5 children. Today, it's only 1.9. And the crazy part is that back in 1970, the average household, 47% were dual income. It has now jumped to 65% is dual income. So millennials and Gen Zers under the household are putting in more hours than the boomers did. We're both working 40 hours a week. But you got way more bang for your buck and more children. You got to expand your family, own a house. Things are so drastically different. The birth rate is plummeting because people can't afford it. So we need to make a change so that we can turn this around.
And also the testosterone is tanking worldwide. Somebody was saying children of men scenario in play. And I thought, that's a little drastic. I hope that's incorrect. Fingers crossed. Here's Rod, and he's talking about mortgage. And he says, what's a negative amortization? A negative amortization. It's when your mortgage interest rate each month is greater than the monthly payment. So the mortgage interest payment, not rates, mortgage interest payment each month is greater than the mortgage payment. How the heck does that happen, you ask? A variable rate contract with a payment that doesn't change if prime rates go up. So for example, you locked in at 1% and your monthly payments were $1,300 or something like that. And now at 6%, your monthly payment should be $2,000. But instead of doing that, you are just adding interest to the loan and paying currently the $1,100 or whatever, $1,300 that was your locked in payment. And then at the end, when your loan comes due, they're going to want all that in a lump sum, or you're not, and you're probably not going to qualify for the mortgage that you need to take out to pay for that, which, yikes, right? Yikes. Not so good. Not so good if things don't stack up, right? Or the interest rates start falling. A variable rate contract with a payment that doesn't change if prime rate goes up. 4 to 6 big banks do that. Yep. There's a lot of people in that boat, right? There's a lot of people who are dealing with that. I've got an update for the small Italian island that was inundated with migrants, with the same amount of migrants as people who live there. And here is an English dub of that. Here we go.
Medusa cannot come 200,000 immigrants on the island. It is an island of 20,000 square kilometers. 20 square kilometers. We have no structures. We want Medusa free. We want to live peacefully on tourism and fishing.
Brilliant.
So that's the translator bot that I found, and it's quite good. But he's talking about Medusa, which is the island that got inundated, right? And he says we don't have the infrastructure, we don't have anything. We want to live on tourism and fishing, and that's it. We're not doing this globalist nightmare thing. So what does it take? Apparently, the full-blown, complete replacement of your population in one fell swoop. That'll get people out in the streets. There you go. Here is Munin rapporteur of Odin, and he says, I love to see the Liberal NDP coalition conspirator get those community notes. So yesterday I showed you a video of Jagmeet Singh claiming that Sobeys, well, here's his tweet. Sobeys just posted a 52% increase in profits and they got community noted. So Sobeys net earnings actually dropped last quarter from 173.7 to 149.4. This jump in profits he's quoting is from the parent company Empire Co. Limited, and this was due to the sale of 56 of their gas stations in Western Canada. When you factor the gas stations out, they lost profits. So Jagmeet Singh is using dishonest accounting, right? And he's not clear about that, right? He's saying that these guys are profiting at this rate, and he says, I think he says just for food. So here, I'll just play this just to remind you what he said.
You won't believe the news that I read today. Sobeys, one of the large corporate grocery stores in Canada, just posted a 52% increase in profits in the first quarter on food alone. Now, this comes as no surprise, as Canadians have felt
on food alone, or gas stations, right? Gas stations, food, it's the same thing, exactly the same thing. Right. Here's Jagmeet Singh again. He says, I'm not going to let Galen Weston or the grocery cartel monopolize everything. I'm introducing a bill on Monday that will crack down on price fixing, investigate, and punish CEOs if they price gouge and bring prices down. If he wants to bring prices down, the only thing that he can do and should do is remove the carbon tax. Here's the Venezuelan timeline. I just want to share my thoughts on the Venezuelan timeline with you about when it's time to pull the parachute pin or whatever, right? Like, when's it time to go? 1992 became third richest country in the hemisphere. 1997 became second largest purchaser of Ford F-150s. 2001 voted for socialist president income inequality. 2004 private healthcare is completely socialized. 2007 all higher education becomes free, in quotes. Same as free Canadian healthcare, right? 2009, socialists banned private ownership of guns. 2012, Bernie Sanders praises their American dream. 2014, opposition leaders are imprisoned. Sounds like the United States, right? Jeepers creepers. How many times has Trump been arraigned? 2016, food and healthcare shortages become widespread. Ruh-roh. 2017, Constitution and elections are suspended. 2019, unarmed citizens are massacred by their own government. So my feeling is the time to go is somewhere between food and healthcare shortages becoming widespread. But I think we're in a point, like we've seen a situation where the Tylenol and children's Tylenol, you couldn't get it. So that's interesting to me. So we've kind of ticked that off a little bit. Depending on where you live in Canada, people could argue that food shortages are already in play due to the high cost of food, et cetera, et cetera. Although when you go to the grocery store, there's food. So if nobody can afford the food, are there food shortages? I don't know. But somewhere between the food shortages and the suspension of the Constitution and elections, that's probably the time to get out of Dodge if you can possibly get out of Dodge. And that's probably leaving it a little bit late. But opposition leaders are imprisoned. As we've seen with Trump, it seems maybe a little early. I mean, Bernier as well. Bernier was imprisoned. So I think that it's a very interesting situation. How do you gauge how serious this is? Because they're going to downplay it, right? They're downplaying. Well, they're trying to use Trump's indictments as reasons for him not to be on the ballot anymore. If they bring in a tax on grocery stores to reduce food prices, that might be the same thing as food shortages. It might be time to go then as well. Holy smoke. Scott Moe says the Trudeau-Singh carbon tax increases the cost of everything we produce, everything we truck to grocery stores, and everything we buy. So what's Trudeau's solution? More taxes? When the only tool you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Yep. And so this is Saskatchewan News. PM Trudeau warns supermarkets of potential new taxes amid soaring food prices. I know how to fix this. We'll add costs. Yay! Everybody's applauding, right? Corey Morgan asks, what will Trudeau's plan to ban plastic wrap in grocery stores do to food prices? Good question, don't you think? Great question. Very concerning. It'll probably increase grocery prices, very obviously. The food professor says, on Monday, I'll be sharing a meeting room in Ottawa with Canada's leading grocers. If you were in my shoes, what questions would you ask? I said, I would ask how much the government policies are costing their companies in increased gas prices, freight, shipping, all of the rest. 2, what would they want the public to know about this that isn't widely understood? And 3, do they support dumping milk? Because it feels like these guys are being smeared. And I've got a whole series of tabs about Russell Brand being smeared because he's over target, it seems. It seems like he's reporting things that the powers that be don't want reported. And so because of that, he is enduring attacks. I think that it's a very similar situation for anybody who's against the narrative. And these guys, the CEOs, the government CEOs, are against the narrative of, or not the government CEOs, excuse me, the grocery CEOs are against the narrative of the greedy grocery CEOs are the ones to blame for the higher prices. And everybody, I think, with sense knows that the higher prices, the reason for the higher prices has a lot to do with the carbon tax because it raises the price of everything. The food professor is really good at responding to questions and things like that. And somebody said, when will supply management be ended? And he says, try never. And like, yikes, right? I hope he's wrong about that, but it would be a way to bring down the price of food. Why would we not want competition in our dairy cartel? Oh, right. The food professor again says, according to our recent survey, 82% of Canadians believe that greed is behind the higher food prices. That's a problem for the industry. It is a problem for the industry because it's not true. Here's the food professor again, and he says, presenting a graph for the proponents of greedflation, food inflation rates since June 2022 compared to Loblaw's same-store food sales growth based on quarterly research. If greedflation were a reality, the orange line would surpass the blue one. It does not. The orange line is well below the blue line, and possibly closer to the blue line than previously before July 22, but I don't have an explanation for that. But that doesn't mean they're gouging people more than retail would generally gouge people, right? Like you have to make a profit. Capitalism works because people are incentivized through money. And I think we've gamed money to the point of it being an abstract thing that people can't keep account of. If you know it costs $9,000 to run my household for a year, like my husband or I make $9,000 and that buys our car, that buys our gas, that buys our groceries, that buys this, that buys that, why are we sending $1 million to Ukraine? Right? If you can ask that question to the government, they're like, oh, crap, right? But even that's a little bit abstract, right? Because like, well, a tank costs $500,000. You know, a car costs $13,000. So a tank costs a lot more than a car. $500,000 for a tank. Would you believe that? But the abstract of money lets people think that, oh, wow, $1 billion doesn't go very far. That barely buys a house down in Toronto nowadays, right? Bricks of cash and hockey bags. I'm being a little bit hyperbolic, but not much. So it's one of those things where I think that watching how much the money's been inflated, even just since the 1970s, and then even before that, the money was inflated, right? It seems like something to disassociate humanity's deep understanding of how much something costs in order to just game the system. And along with that game came the devaluation of the money, meaning you work more and you get less and you have less children, and that falls completely in line with what the goals are. Not my goals and not the Canadian government's goals. Well, maybe the Canadian government's goals but certainly not my goals. It falls in line with people who want depopulation and the rest, right? Even the Sustainable Development Goals want a reduced population in the world. Christia Freeland says, our government is delivering for Canadians. And she's saying this unironically. She's not trying to be funny. This is 7:46 p.m. yesterday, September 16th. She says, we're blue check mark, which is ironic, right? She's got a red dress on here, but blue check mark. Lifting the GST on rental construction, pushing Canada's largest grocers to stabilize prices, delivering affordable childcare, and building a clean economy that is creating great careers. None of that is true. Here's just one example. Here's a woman, and she is crying in her car, and she is upset because she is working to be poor, working to be broke. Here's her story. We're starting with how much she makes per hour. Here we go.
I make $21 an hour working 40 hours a week. I have no extra expenses, no bills out of my living. I have one credit card that's maxed because I've lived off of it. But other than that, I don't have cable. I haven't had cable in 10 years. We have cell phones, but, you know, that's required to live on. But other than that, nothing extra. On paper, my bills are $2,701. My income is $2,710. Do the math. $9 a month before I pay for food, gas, car repairs, any entertainment. There's no money for that. And my car is dying. It's paid for, so I don't have car payments now that I'm going to replace. And I don't know how to do that on $9 a month. $9 to feed myself, $9 to buy a car, $9 for insurance. Yeah. So at the end of the day, this is me because I worked 8.5 hours a day, knowing that it's not enough, that it won't be enough. Fuck you, Ontario.
I don't know that it's Ontario. I don't know that it's just Ontario, right? There are places that people aren't getting by either. And it's interesting that the Liberal government thinks that they're delivering by, you know, putting these blue check marks and having all this messaging coming out that says we're delivering. It's not true, I don't think. Hello everyone, thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to canadapoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.